Here's how I drew this concept art in an old version of Blender 3D. Hi, I'm Pyrous and this is Archon. She's my character from a martial arts tabletop game that I've been playing with some friends. If you want to check it out, it's called Panic at the Dojo. At the time of recording, I'd already made a couple first drafts of how I wanted this character to look, but I'm going to run you through my design process as we go, even if some of it was done before I drew this image. Let's get started. Now, I have a special default Blender file set up. It consists of an orthographic camera pointing down directly and with the grid turned off and sky color turned on so that I can focus on it like a canvas. Normally for a scene or a commission or something, I'd start by sketching out what I want the image to look like, but since the focus of this image is on the clothing and the character's concept, I'm actually using a pose reference from Posemaniacs for this one. I'm also trying to keep in mind the project scope here. It's just a picture for a tabletop I'm doing, so I'm not entirely concerned with making the pose exactly how I want it. This'll do just fine. When coming up with Archon, I wanted a no-nonsense DPS class who was self-sufficient and able to take a lot of hits. My inspiration immediately was from action movies like John Wick, where that basically describes how the protagonist fights in, video game terms. And I wanted to have kind of a tactical aesthetic, so one of my inspirations was immediately Rama from the movie The Raid. I actually still haven't seen those movies, but it always stuck out to me when seeing clips from them, how it's this guy in like SWAT gear who's out there doing kung fu and stuff, and that was kind of the vibe that I wanted to do for this character. This was also when I came up with her name, Archon. In Gnosticism, one of my go-to references for world building, the evil false god uses angels known as archons to carry out his will. Archons, a narrative foil to angels, are often depicted wielding their authority in selfish and destructive ways. I think of them a lot like cosmological corrupt cops. I felt that could really evoke her past, as well as the sort of behavior and environment that she was running away from, what drove her to become more heroic. Here's where I also started getting ideas for what kinds of equipment she might have. What I love about Panic at the Dojo as a system is how much room there is for flavor. Even though all of the moves you can make have names that imply different kinds of kicks and grapples and superpowers, really you can name them whatever you want. I liked the idea of this character having different, more profane tactical abilities at her disposal that would set her apart from the more fantasy and sci-fi-like characters that would be fighting both against her and on her side. I'm gonna turn the audio back on from the recording, because I didn't leave many notes for myself here, and I kinda like just the sound of the rapid clicking since it's time-lapsed. I don't know, it's fun. I also just don't have a whole lot to say in this part, but I still want to show the process, so if by any chance you're listening to me in the background, this might be the time to check me out for a sec. There is such a nice storm going on right now outside my window, but I'm like low-key a little bit worried that my power's gonna cut out, so I'm saving the hell out of this project, like, every other second. Now, no hard feelings. All of our attention spans are shot, but I'm a little curious now how many people are skipping this part, so if you heard that part about the storm, tell me about your favorite weather in the comments. Helps me in the algorithm. So for those of you wondering what exactly I've been doing this whole time, obviously this is not the grease pencil. I am extruding vertices on a 2D sort of plane to create an image that is flat in 3D space. This sort of has the effect of being like a vector image where I can zoom in on it as far as I want and I can warp the lines however I want. That's not why I do it though, I do it because I'm insane. Here you can see I was trying to make the shoelaces have some thickness. I tend to do this in a lot of my work, even though it's a bit frustrating to do. In this case though, it was too frustrating, and I didn't care very much. I don't care. I don't care, so I just did lines instead. It looks fine. I'm one of those artists who could very easily get lost in details forever, so a big part of my art is actually trying to hold back on those things and focus on the bigger picture. In fact, even making this video, which I am completely winging, by the way, despite how scripted I sound at some points, I am still really tempted to just show the entire time-lapse, warts and all, because I want to show off my process. But obviously we would be here forever if I did that, and it would be a very different kind of video. I like something more compact and wordy, and not just long, raw footage of me doing all this. Now here's where I start to sprinkle on my special ingredient, molly straps. These are a very common attachment system in a lot of modern military equipment, but it serves a very special purpose in Archon's design. You see, Archon is supposed to be a very tough character. This is reflected in the gameplay by how she generates a lot of iron tokens, which are this game's sort of shield system that reduces and protects you from damage. I really wanted her to be the kind of character who could take a punch. To portray this, I wanted to have her be armored but sleek. One of the best ways to get across an armored look is not just through the bulkiness of the silhouette, but through the character's texture. Molly straps, although they don't provide any actual armor, provide an amazing texture. And this is where I started using them to make her surface look rougher. I always felt molly straps were almost evocative of brigandine armor, and in this case I think that's the exact kind of armor she would wear if she was wearing the more medieval kind. Something flexible but still really hard. Here you can see one of my strategies that I use while drawing in this style. I don't have layers in the traditional sense like you would in Photoshop or Illustrator. So what I do is I start drawing again about a meter above the plane in 3D space that I was drawing on before. It sounds a little confusing, but it comes pretty naturally to me, and it kind of has a physicality to it that I think makes it more intuitive. Now you can see that I'm getting started on coloring it. I start by filling in all of the line art with polygons. These are all some gnarly n-gons with like a million vertices, but topology doesn't really matter because these are all flat planes. Once I have all of these filled in is when I color them. For now though, I'm not coloring the whole image, I'm just filling in these second layer items. Instead, we're going to move on to the head before I get started coloring everything. Another piece of military equipment that I thought would be perfect for her is this ballistic mask. They're not very common in real life, but they are incredibly striking, and I thought it would be perfect to kind of mix her scary, evil look with kind of a masked hero look. And I also thought it might make some sense for more of a boxer type of fighter to have, like her. Here I am kind of getting ready for the coloring stage. Aside from just the scar and the outline of her buzz cut, I really wanted to show some personalization on her equipment. So here's the outline of some paint splatter. I kind of got the idea that she would have paint on her armored bits that are kind of evocative of blood spatter to sort of show the ghosts of past beatings she's given. So there's going to be some identical stuff on her knee pads and the knuckles of her knuckled gloves and that sort of thing. But I thought it would be most important to put some on her mask because that kind of gives her face something more identifiable than an existing ballistic mask. And it also means she's been headbutting people, which is pretty hardcore and kind of funny. I can't do block text to save my life, but here goes. And now I am for real getting started on coloring. I'm duplicating the line art as you can see, moving it down so that it'll be under the true line art, and then I'm going to delete all of the borders in this line art that are just lines for texturing and don't represent actual borders between colors. This is going to clean it up and make it much easier to fill in with polygons as I described before. So now that everything's filled in, I'm picking the colors that I'm going to use for the different polygons. I start by referencing the first draft, but as you'll see, I actually end up straying pretty far from that. Black can be a difficult color to work with because, as any other artist out there might know, nothing's ever just black. You have to use a few different shades, sometimes within a very small window depending on the lighting. I reserve true black exclusively for outlines and very shaded areas. That means most of her suit is going to be gray, but I feel I went too light in the first draft, so I'm going to try and get closer to true black without dipping into it. This is what I ended up with for Archon's concept art. I also opted to redraw her out of gear picture that I made with the first draft, where I provided some more detail in the face, the markings, and the tattoos. The makeup around her eyes is actually there to make them appear black through the holes of her mask. This was inspired by Robert Pattinson's Batman, actually. Aside from all that, let's see, I drew her a nightstick, this cool item she got later in the game, a bunch of other characters who I might post speed draws of later. I did record some of them. And other than that, I think that is it for today. As some of you know, I'm trying to finally grow this channel, so if you haven't already, please subscribe, do all the things that help me out, and I will see you next time I get one of these up. See you around.